Everybody. Once again, I am Travis Berardi, Big League Berardi, K-Mac Trav, Big Mac, whatever you say. That is Hayden, Yak Gray, yards after catch. Don't ask. I just one night figured that out, you know. Better than string bean, though, right?
Yeah, it's okay. Cool.
And welcome inside the stat leaders for passing, rushing, receiving the top 10 in North Central Ohio, brought to you by Spitzer of Mansfield. If you want a car, vehicle, SUV, truck, whatever, go to Spitzer. They got good stuff. But Hayden and I here, week number 7 coming up. And as always, Hayden, I can't believe it's already week 7. 6 weeks in the books, and we have our stats for passing, rushing, receiving coming up right there. And you know what? Let's just stop talking and get right into it, Hayden. And begin with our passing leaders at number 10, Duke Reese of the Mansfield Senior TY Tigers, making it into the top 10 at 10. 9 touchdowns, 1,037 yards, 64 of 123 passing. At number 9, A.J. Bauer of Northmore with Max Lauer out. They've gone to the passing game a little bit more. He is at 8 touchdowns, 1,037 yards on 75 of 127 passing. At number 8, Malachi Bayless of Bucyrus staying in the top 10. Over 1,000 yards passing at 1,067, 82 of 164, 9 touchdowns. At number 7, Brandon Mitchell, South Central, dropped down a little bit, but he still keeps that caught in our top 10, laying there, you know, every week he's in it. Mr. Consistent, exactly. 1,120 yards, 16 touchdowns, 113 of 159 passing. At number 6, Blake Foose of Seneca East, 1,130 yards, 10 yards more, 12 touchdowns, 78 of 145 passing. Number 5, Caden Holman, Upper Sandusky. So those at Northern 10 quarterbacks really taking over things this week. 13-13 on the passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 101 of 169. So pretty accurate as well. Now to the top 5. At number 4, Mason Wolf, West Holmes. They continue to roll. One of the top teams in the state in Division 4. 18 touchdowns, 1,571 yards, 78 of 108 passing. Just West Holmes continuing to roll, Hayden.
Yeah, they've kind of taken control. I think we've known for a couple weeks now the OCC, but they look to be looking for much more than just a conference championship, looking to see what they can do special in this year's postseason.
And with them and Glenville dropping down to D3, they're in the same region, but if they can get past Glenville and, you know, maybe Clear Fork or one of those other teams, they might have a legit shot at Canton this season. Now to the top 3. At number 3, Braden DeVito of Shelby continuing to hang around. Another one of those teams in that D4 Region 14 that could have something to say, although, you know, tough loss to Gallion this past week. We'll see if they can bounce back, but he has 1,652 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 89 of 148. Now to number 2, Caden Shadone sticking right there again, nearly breaks 2,000 yards. He probably will coming up here in week 7. 1,935 yards, 21 touchdowns, 132 of 212. And as always, our number 1 passer, Hayden, Isaac Robinson, 1 yard short of 2,000. So close. 26 touchdowns, 115 of 180 passing. And Hayden, let's break him down a little bit more.
Yeah, we finally got to get cameras on the kid. We've been looking forward to seeing what he can do. And, you know, they play a really tough SBC team in Huron, and it wasn't as close as we would have liked to see, as they would have liked to see. But I think his performance still very admirable and obviously doing a good job to maintain the position through this long. Now, Caden Shadone is really sneaking up on him. So a couple tough matchups left for Willard this year. So if Robinson wants to maintain the number 1 spot on the list, they're going to have to keep going through the air. But I think we've been able to digest and see that is their game plan.
4 games to get 1,000 yards. Can he break 3,000? They got some tough tests coming up. They have Edison this week, Port Clinton, Oak Harbor, I believe, and then Vermilion to close out the year. So we'll have to see if Isaac Robinson can hold off Caden Shadone first, because he's a baller down there at River Valley, the human Madden character, as we would like to say. But we'll have to see if he can break in 3,000 yards passing. Who knows? I like to see it.
Me too.
But we'll see with a tough schedule. Let's get now to the top 10 receivers, the ones that catch those balls from these great quarterbacks. And let's take a look at the top 10. First at 10, Landon McFrederick of Ashland, still hanging around there. Only 3 touchdowns, but he makes the catches between the 10s. 36 catches, 465 yards. At number 9, we have Carson Hammonds of Willard. He's now breaking in. You've had a few Willard receivers that are helping out to get their quarterback to 1999, but now it'd be crazy. We may see 3 Willard flashes in the top 10 by the end of this season. At number 8, breaking into the top 10, Amar Davis. We've heard about him all year, and he's finally into this top 10. 21 catches, 482 yards, 5 touchdowns, and let's take a closer look at him, Hayden.
Yeah, you're going to see in these specific highlights, he had a really breakout game week 1 against Norwalk, hauls in a couple of touchdowns, and really displays that speed. Like you said, we've been waiting to see when he would break onto this list, and sometimes these first few weeks, they have a lot of consistency, take some guys a little bit more adjustments with their quarterbacks for the receiving list, but truly a speedster and definitely deserving to be on this top 10 list, doing a nice job for those TY Tigers.
Yeah, and Mansfield Senior, 2 really tough games against West Holmes and Massillon, Washington. We'll see if they can bounce back. Can they beat teams like Worcester? Can they beat teams like Ashland coming up this weekend to show that the TY Tigers are a team to beat in Division 3, Region 10. Now to number 7. Chris Buchanan, Western Reserve, still hanging in there. Only 3 touchdowns, but 27 catches, 492 yards. At number 6, Jonathan Metzger of Ashland. So once again, 2 arrows remain in the top 10. 33 catches, 560 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So you got to break at least probably 600 yards to make the top 5, which is crazy here in North Central Ohio. And at number 5, it is Kyle Maltrich of West Holmes. 27 catches, 623 yards, and racking up those fantasy points with 11 touchdowns, Hayden.
Yeah, this is that time, too, where you just mentioned you got 2 arrows on here, and then you start to make the connections of our quarterback list with our receivers. By this time of the season, you're going to begin to develop and see who their favorite targets are. So for Mason Wolf, Kyle Maltrich's really that guy who's been getting it done this year.
All right, now to number 4, Isaac Blair, South Central. Brandon Marshall, got to have that number 1 receiver, like I always say, and Blair has been that guy. 54 catches, 628 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Nearly half the passes that Marshall's thrown, half the completions are to Isaac Blair. Just a great playmaker at South Central. To number 3, Cam Robinson of Willard. There's the other flash, still flashing up there in the top 5. 33 catches, 685 yards, and 8 touchdowns for Willard, who, I think if they can get a couple more wins, they'll be a tough out in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that the competition in football has begun to increase just in competitiveness over at Willard again, and I think the most impressive stat for him may be we need to start calling Cam Robinson Yak, because getting that many yards off 33 catches, very impressive.
Cam Yak Robinson, there you go. You heard it from Hayden first. At number 2, Isaiah Ramsey from the Shelby Whippets, helping DeVito out stay in the top 5. Well, DeVito's helping Ramsey out as well in the top 5. 34 catches. Talk about yak yards. 761 yards on 34 catches and 6 touchdowns. And our number 1 receiver is Kean Shadone of River Valley. 53 catches, 860 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He sets up his brother to finish things off, because Caden likes to run it in when he's inside the 5, but Kean helps set him up there with the 860 yards receiving and the 4 touchdowns. So there you go with our receiving leaders. Once again, very good numbers for both passing and receiving. We're going to see a few 1,000-yard receivers here this season. But now to my favorite stat of the 3, the rushers. First at number 10, Addison Raymer of Crestview, still staying there in the top 10, 123 carries, 777 yards. But once again, getting that fantasy points up there with the 14 touchdowns for the undefeated Crestview Cougars. Now to number 9, Mr. Caylan Lemaster of Centerburg, breaking into the top 10, 97 carries, 779 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I was able to catch up with him earlier this week and have our interview. So here's our player spotlight for this week's Stat Leaders. One, Caylan Lemaster. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I'm definitely more of a shiftier guy, not as big as Tyler. I don't know, I just find my holes in my offensive line creates and I take advantage of them. Definitely all the credit to my O-line. They've been working hard. They've been getting after it, making it way easier for me and Tyler.
Well, just speaking of Tyler, how great is it having another quarterback that can not only pass and run to kind of open up the run game for yourself?
I mean, when you got 2 backs back there like that, it's hard to stop from a defensive point. I mean, it definitely opens up a lot more for me, and it opens up more for him for the pass game because we incorporate a lot of like fake handoffs into our offense, so that definitely draws the safeties, draws the middle linebackers, so it definitely helps.
Tough loss week 1, but it seemed to more open your eyes than get you guys down. Just what did that game do for you guys to help, just, I guess, wake you up?
I mean, yeah, it was definitely a motivational factor. It's been a while since we lost to Utica, and it definitely showed us that you got to work for what you want, and winning games is hard no matter who you're playing. So it was an eye-opener.
And finally, you guys are in position to win a KMAC championship, make a playoff run. Just what's it going to take as the weeks go on to finish the season and get to that point?
Just focusing on ourselves, not who we're playing. I mean, it's a day-by-day process, and we have the culture that every single day you got to get better, and we just live by that.
Just got to get better day by day. It's exactly what you need to do. And if you're peaking at the end of the season, that's when you can have the big run in the playoffs. But Lemaster and then Tyler Johnson, maybe he's in the top 10. We'll see here shortly, but he's one of those big playmakers, Hayden.
Yeah, I mean, such a well-spoken interview, too, really talking about what it's taken to get to this point in the season for Centerburg, and he's grinded his way onto this list, and good things going on down there for the Trojans.
All right, back to the top 10 at number 8. Garrett George of Mount Gilead. Matt Bland dropped out of the top 10 this week, but Garrett George stays there. 111 carries, 788 yards, and 9 touchdowns. At number 7, Ben Berger, eating up those yards. 75 carries, 805 yards, 12 touchdowns for the St. Paul Flyer, who continues to fly up the standings after their first 2 losses of the season. They're 4-0 since then. At number 6, Gabe Ivey. Galleon, huge win over Shelby this past week, stays alive, and they're not only in the playoff race, but also the MOAC race maybe here if they can continue to win. 108 on the carries, 809 yards, 11 touchdowns. Now to the top 5, and Shea Sparks of Plymouth held to his one of the smaller yardage numbers of the season against Western Reserve this past week, but still he's at number 5, 97 carries, 880 yards, and 14 touchdowns for Plymouth. At number 4, there's Tyler Johnson, 139 carries, 902 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Johnson and Lemaster, the big 1-2 punch in the KMAC.
Yeah, it's always nice to have 2 of those guys, and one of those, I mean, it's probably a little bit nerve-wracking as a coach, but I think Tyler Johnson's proven that he's quite a warrior. He's quite that Trojan. So 2 of these guys getting it done on the ground, and also Johnson doing it in the air. So good things, good recipe for success, and makes defenses have to scramble.
Now to the century mark rushers coming up. Number 3, well, nearly century mark. Quincy Krabs, still crab walking his way up the rankings. 131 carries, 992 yards, so probably his first carry on Friday or Saturday whenever St. Paul plays. It'll break the 1,000-yard mark. 10 touchdowns as well. To number 2, Tegan Rule, Fredericktown. 135 carries, 1,009 yards, 11 touchdowns. Now, when Andy and I were calling this game against Northmore, we thought he was short, but I believe they counted the hook and lateral yards as rushing, which I'm fine with it. He breaks into the century mark, 1,009 yards for a Fredericktown team that still has a chance at a KMAC championship.
That's right, and I know we were talking a little bit earlier, could be chefing up what could be a phenomenal Freddyburg game that could decide a lot in that conference.
Yeah, if Centerburg in 2 weeks defeats Danville and continues to win, then it would set up. If Fredericktown wins, then it's a three-way tie for the KMAC championship. If Centerburg wins, they get it outright, but we'll find out. We still got a lot of football to be played here in the last 4 weeks. But one thing we know for sure at number one, as always now, Dane Nauman, 157 carries, 1,271 yards, 15 touchdowns. Will he break 2,000, Hayden?
I think so. I think he can. I know that some games have not been. He started off with that huge, monstrous, over 350-yard game, and I know things have slowed down a little bit since, but it's all about sustainability and conserving him as well. So I think that if the coaches want him to get to that point, he can. But we'll see come towards the end of the season.
All right, and we'll see who does what this coming Friday. As always, tune into the Friday Night Pigskin, Friday night, 11:30, for all the scores, stats, analysis, and highlights. We'll see if some of these guys show out once again. But that's Hayden. I'm Travis for the Stat Leaders, brought to you by Spitzer of Mansfield. You want a car, truck, SUV, go to Spitzer. But for now, we're going to head on out of here. We'll see you next week.